Hello, people. Yes, I do mean you specifically. How is everybody? I can see lots of people already here. Well, first of all, well, there's me. I was the first message in chat. I guess that honor belongs to me, if there's any honor to speak of in that. I will be here within a short period of time. Well, apparently that was true. Hello, Mr. W. Be seeing you then. Yes, indeed. Hello, Kangafango. Halo, UK. And hello, Marky. Hello. Yes, I saw your your pictures on Discord, and it looks so nice. It really does. Good evening. So, how are we all feeling today? Me? Well, quite happy, because still the sunlight's still coming in over here. Not directly, but indirectly, which is nice. How about you? Good, thanks. And you? Good too. Thank you too. Good, thanks. Testing a session for the Botman Wentworth Railway. Oh, nice. What loco are you using? Lieutenant Andrei. Is it Andrei or Andrei? Like A or I at the end? Because I think I always pronounce it Andrei, but it might be Andrei. Reporting for duty. Oh, your report. Oh, I see. Oh, nice. Been a while, hasn't it? Or am I misremembering? Well. Greetings, Lieutenant. Penny tank with auto coach. Auto coach. Not made any sessions for it for a while, no. Has indeed. I mean, you being at a stream. I was off for a few though, so I might have missed you. How are you feeling tonight? Well, this evening, Mr. W. Good, great. Right. Hi, hello, Slavic Eagle. Welcome. Hey. Still working on porting as many infra maps in Gmod as you can, probably. I was on last Tuesday stream. Haha. Where is Shardise, though? Oh, no, I'm here. I wasn't, so that explains it. Marky was here on the last Tuesday 19 stream exactly a week back when Shardise built the bridge. Miss W, but you're alright. Exactly. I am just recompiling without triggers and stairs. Why without stairs? Why without stairs, though? I understand triggers, but why stairs? Alright, so far so good. Good to hear. There you are! Haha! Hello, yes. Oh, has it only be just loaded for you? Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Good to hear, good to hear. Hey, Slavic Eagle, yes. Alright, glad to hear it's loaded now, though. Hi, Kango. Hey, hi, Slavic Eagle. Yes, indeed, everybody's saying hello. That's very nice. Very, very nice. Because that brush does not exist in Vanilla Hammer. Still a little confused as to what exactly a brush in this instant is. Is it like an asset type? Hi, Marky, or at least Gmod Hammer. So it's put as a block. Probably then. Right, so shall we get started? I think that we maybe should. By the way, if anybody would like to do voice chat, I'm up for tonight. Keep saying tonight, it's a habit from winter. But no, it's not night anymore, at least not on this stream. If anybody wants to, then we can do that. If not, that's fine too. Right, so we're not actually looking at this map, because that is the secret. We're looking at this map. And yes, I specifically didn't set a thumbnail yet, so you wouldn't see it. Tuesday, at the time of recording, or recording. Why is it recording but not recording? Secret, eh? Yeah, I know you know that I know that you know. And so on and so forth. It should be loaded in within the next sort of 2 to 3 days. Yeah. Ah, there we go. Oh wait, did I increase the shadow quality? May have done that accidentally. Not sure. Should be okay either way. Right. So, last time we worked more on the houses, and we also worked on a bit on the bridge and this area from with the field and the school and areas like this. And there was another very helpful comment left the previous stream about the house and things. And yes, you're right. When companies build housing for workers, they usually build it very close together, like very, very close together. And yes, I had actually heard that story about them reaching out through the kitchen window on the opposite house's kitchen window to borrow stuff. I'd actually heard that story as well. Thing is that at this point here, I want to keep the houses this spaced out, even though it's maybe not that realistic, because I want there to be a contrast. So when the line gets further into town, so when it sort of starts here where a lot of the more curvy roads are and a lot of that sort of stuff, and then further downtown basically, I want to have the houses more denser there. So that's why I want the contrast to be there. Additionally, it could be that maybe there were maybe not all of these houses were built by the same company. Maybe there were several companies and they built housing here. Well, they built housing here for the factories, and it was like a contest almost. Like, oh no, you should come work for us. We've got much more yard space for you. You need much more yard space. No, we've got more yard space, and that's why the houses are so far apart. I think I may have the shadows on too high of a thing. Maybe. Yeah. I think actually probably not though, because these don't have shadows at the moment, so I probably have already turned it down, so that should be fine. Right. Also, some interesting points about the school placement, and yeah, there was. Oh, I think there was a thing about the chairs. Grandstand. That's what they were called. Grandstand. I found them by accident when I was working on my secret route, which you don't know about. And yeah, that's what they were called. There we go. Not sure where they would be placed on the field realistically, but this should be fine. Yes, it was also recommended to put the baseball pitch inside a racetrack. And yes, that's true. That's quite a realistic thing that I've also seen in movies quite a bit. Let's see, is there... Well, there's also the Grandstand 2, which is one that has a roof, but I think that the open-air ones are probably a bit better for this situation. Not quite the thing I was looking for. Also, that's interesting. They've mapped a texture of the inside of a piano in there, which is, yeah, interesting. Bit too small, this asset, I think. Ooh, that actually looks quite nice, but too European. Okay, so let's have a look at racing. Or maybe, well, if I look for track, it might be. Terrace, Opus Ras, Terrace has race in it. A lot of terraces actually. Maybe if I look for sports, perhaps. Also, yeah, I did accidentally make some progress in my role-playing game as well. And I say that because I didn't actually mean to get back into writing, continuing to write on it this time, in this time period. But then one thing led to another, and then I ended up writing a whole bunch of stuff for it accidentally. track, maybe. It's a bit too much. Worked mostly on the magic system, as well as some other connected rules. Worked on the combat system as well, which, yes, it will have that because, of course, if you have, because it is fantasy setting. Although I do want it to be mostly Bronze Age, but Bronze Age fantasy thing. So if you set that kind of setting, you have to expect combat. You have to have that there, which is important because that the threat of that is what leads players to think twice about situations, and what leads them to maybe treat situations differently than if they knew that everything was safe. Because that's what makes it exciting. Not necessarily the actual fighting, although for a lot of people that is where most of the fun lies, but the actual threat of it, the possibility of it, if you know what I mean. And one of the things I'm quite interested in, that I've been, the last thing that I've kind of worked on. Look at that. Where did I get this from? The Jurassic Park assets. That Slovak Eagle. Where the Jurassic Park fence assets part of one of your maps that I downloaded? Like that I downloaded the dependencies from. Because I mean, that would be interesting. Are those Easter eggs on one of your maps? Because I don't know where else I would have gotten them from. I'll search for sport. Also, I'll read chat probably. Once the chat has voiced once more, stories, puns and jokes galore. Pubs, yes, puns. I knew you meant puns. I knew you were gonna say contrast. That should be fine. Yes! These are great! I forgot to tell you about the brown spline ones that I had found before. Apologies, Sarah. It's fine, don't worry about it. Remote control grand piano. Yes. Your own tabletop role-playing game? Oh, how come? By golly, do tell us more about that. I might, but I won't give you all the rules because then, well, you wouldn't need to buy it then. Although, if you're watching the stream, you're interested in playing it, I'm probably going to need you for the playtest anyway, so you'd get a free copy then, so, well. Also, some industrial age elements. Maybe. At the moment, the main focus is going to be Bronze Age. However, I may, since fantasy, I may have certain countries that have been around for much, much longer, that have technologically progressed, that do have some industrial age elements to them, but they are going to be very hard to get to, very hard to get into, and even harder to get back out of. Very xenophobic, isolationist, probably, because otherwise that technology would just spill over everywhere, and, well, it would stop the rest of it being, well, Bronze Age. No, it wasn't. Huh. I have no idea where I've gotten that from. I'll have to have a think about that, actually. Alright, yeah, the pubs was an unaccidental accident. So it was deliberate. Deliberate, I say. Well, you say, technically. Heh. R? What do you mean, R? Yeah, I don't know about the racetrack thing. Can't find it at the moment. But also, one thing was bicycle racks. Yes. That's a great suggestion. Because the suggestion was made that since the school is so close to the houses, lots of the kids would probably make their way here by bicycle, so it should have some bicycle racks. So, yeah. If I have... There we go. These ones should be fine. And given that the entrance is actually back through there, I think it'll probably be good to have them... Well, let's have them here. The reasoning behind why I want them at this location is that if some kids are nervous about their bikes being stolen, then they can, if there's a classroom, they can look out and keep an eye on their bikes. The JP assets were built-in? Were they built? I don't think so. I don't think so. Robert Bennett. Yes! I was wondering if someone would guess the name. Yes, it was, of course. Again, Robert Bennett. Thank you very much. Great suggestion. What racetrack are you looking for? Oh, just for the... I was wondering if there was one... Just a racetrack, basically. Like a... Bit of a... I wonder what that shape would be called. Like if you had a circle, and you pulled the two things apart. Like that... Because it was said that oftentimes... like a baseball pitch was inside of a racetrack, but I was just wanting to see if there was one that maybe would fit around here. And yes, the park was also a thing that fits well. Not going to populate these with bicycles at the moment, because I want to do that in the sessions, so that because the bicycles are here, it means that school is on at the moment, so I guess, eh? Oh, oval? No, not an oval. Because an oval isn't an... Actually, maybe it is an oval. No, what's the difference? Because there's if there's a shape where there are two parallel lines, and then it closes in like half circles, that's one shape. And then there's another one, which is basically just a circle that's stretched. So it's actually just a shape that is always curving. It just curves more towards the ends. Ellipse. Oh, right, ellipse. I forgot the word ellipse. So yeah, oval and ellipse. So it is an oval. I thought oval was the other one, but that's fine. Anyway, I did say I was gonna continue animals tomorrow. Yes, you did. Anyway, snaps fingers. Yes, Shred Ice 2021. I know what you mean, Shred Ice. Ellipse. Hello. Hello, Trainz Plus. How are you doing? Hey, from the UK, and that rhymed. Okay, so what is the next stop? And by stop I mean thing to do-ish. Yeah, you know what I mean. Well... For starters, I want to finish putting houses here on these rows. I want to finish putting houses here, and then once that is done, I'll probably put some fields over here to kind of finish this side of the tracks off a little bit more. And then after that... Because I do really like the refinery over here, because I like the way it looks. Kind of that it has that feeling that I want for this area. Which is also, I want, but that's definitely an industry that needs a rail connection. So I will have some, depending on what exactly is being refined here, I will have, well, multiple industries connected, so that means I'll have it connect to the main line, and then I'll probably also have a yard somewhere down below. Hey, yes, so let me go ahead then. Yeah, sure. Guys, gotcha. Sessions, night sessions that also have the bikes. That doesn't also have the bikes, but on the other hand, it might make sense if the kids have to stay at school longer. Well, maybe. Hello, hi. Where was I? Ah, yes. Okay, so houses. I'll actually just delete them and redo them, because not that one. These ones. Because the distances were just wrong. Let's see, is this? Yeah, like I was saying about my role-playing game, what I'm designing the system. I want to give shields a bit more to do, because throughout all of human history, up to the point where guns became a thing, shields were always, there were two things that were basically uniform inventions that happen all over the place, everywhere. Those are spears and shields. A spear, pretty obvious. You aim the pointy thing at the danger, and, well, it's a long stick, so you stay far enough away. So you aim the pointy thing at the danger, pretty self-explanatory idea, pretty easy idea. Which, incidentally, is also why chimpanzees and orangutans have also been observed to actually use spears. They've been observed, well, orangutans, there's the famous image or film of an orangutan using a spear that it had sharpened itself to fish, and chimpanzees to catch bush babies. So, yeah, pretty simple invention that, which has been used well, there's evidence for it being used more than 500,000 years ago. So for humans have been using them for over 500,000 years. So yeah, that's one thing. The other thing is a shield. Basically, okay, I've got a pointy thing. Oh, but the other guy over there has also got a pointy thing. Well, let me have a thing that I can put between me and the other guy's pointy thing. So yeah, shield. So because those two things have been so prevalent throughout human history, and especially in the Bronze Age, because they've always been used, but in the Bronze Age is where it was really refined a lot, because the Bronze Age was the first time that we know of, at least. I mean, the thing is, dates for first civilizations and for first is always being pushed back further and further. But it's the first instance that we know of where organized warfare was something that really happened, like on a large scale, like where countries had enough resources to be able to field armies with this kind of equipment. So that's where we get all the different types of spear, and we get tactics like the hoplites and the phalanxes and all that sort of stuff with the Greeks and a lot of other civilizations as well. And since I don't necessarily want my game to take place in that sort of environment, that sort of Near Eastern environment, but I do want it to take place in the technological age of the Bronze Age. Well, mostly at least. Yeah, and that's why I want to give a bit more detail on spears and shields. Because one thing that's actually, if you look at ancient history, sword technology was a thing for a long time, and yet really the only power that used swords in their armies for their soldiers, like a lot, were the Romans. Yeah, because swords takes quite a bit more training to use effectively, but a spear is much more easier to use. So it would take something like the military might and resources of the Roman Empire to be able to afford to train your soldiers in using swords. And of course the Romans didn't exclusively use swords, they also of course used spears, like for example the pilum or pilum. Yeah, so that's what I want to do with it. Also, yeah, so it's kind of a bit of a rock, paper, scissors thing, kind of. So there are, of course, spears that are not meant to be thrown really. So spears that are used more so as thrusting weapons. So you're behind, you've got a shield in one hand, spear in the other, and you hide behind the shield while thrusting forward with a spear. Which, incidentally, is one of the reasons why I wanted to make my own system, because, well, one of the less important reasons, but one of the reasons is because in Pathfinder and D&D, longer spears are... Actually, hold on, I think I... Oh, I pasted the houses the wrong way around. That is no good. Don't mind me. Yeah, so you can... So, longer spears, it counts as two-handed weapons, which means you can't use them in combination with a shield. Which is also... really not that... I understand from a gameplay perspective that would make sense in the game, within the rules that they have previously made, but it doesn't really make that much sense. So the thing is that, yeah, that's one of the things I want to basically fix, that I want to do better, and that is to have the system be, well, reasonably balanced in handling the use of a shield and spear. So long spears, so which are the ones for thrusting mostly, and shorter spears, which are ones for throwing. So yeah. Also with shields, of course, there are different types of shields. You've got ones like buckles, which are attached to like your arm, like small shields, which are used more for nimble strategic blocking of things, and there are larger shields which are used more for military grade shields, which are designed not only to protect you if you've got them strapped to your arm, like large shields, round shields, to not only protect you, but if you're in a line, to also protect the individual to either your right or your left, probably your left because you've got your spear in the right hand. So to work in cooperation with that. And then you've got, of course, the tower shields. So the Roman, what were they called? The Spectrum? I don't know. You know the tower shields, the classic Roman shields, which, of course, were rounded so that you didn't necessarily have to give them armor because... Well, the shield was rounded, which meant it does the same thing, essentially. And it's square, so you can stack them, which is making it easier for logistics. And you can hide behind it easier, because basically if you just pull your head down a little, it covers the entirety of your body. Your legs don't stick out, your head doesn't stick out if you pull it in. You're safe behind a wall, essentially. Which means the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to have different abilities, and then I'm going to make different shields, which then have a varying combination of those abilities, so that they're a bit more useful than just providing a number bonus as to your armor class or whatever the system you're using uses, basically. If that makes sense. I'm struggling a little bit with finding the right words to explain this properly. Which is probably because I've just come from writing some of that. So I've still got all of that stuff in my mind. So kind of sorting that out and finding the right words to describe the exact thing that I mean. Anyway, I should probably read a bit of chat. Otherwise I'll have miles and miles to go through. Right. Where was I? Ah, there we go. The next day, A and Amelia have to go to the square to get a Christmas tree. Alright, so how many days is it until Christmas again? I'm not sure. At this point, hello, Mr. Snipes, welcome. How are you? Hey, how are you today? Bush babies? Yeah, look it up. You'll find them. Little monkeys, I think. Oh? Yeah, spears were quite trendy, especially in the 1000s. Well, actually, yes, but the kind of peak of spears, I would say, would be ancient times. Like the Bronze Age, I think, is where spears really got going. And then in medieval times, yes, a lot of different spears. Like there's so much variety in spears in medieval times. But with steel, swords were becoming more common. Spear, because again, the one drawback with spear, well, quite a few, but one of the drawbacks with spears is that most of them are quite big, and it's a bit awkward to handle sometimes, especially if you're not a soldier in an army, but you just want a weapon for personal defense or defense. So in that case, a little sword might be more applicable, more appropriate, which is incidentally is why in the UK people drive on the left, which is also why in the rest of Europe it was the case previously that people rode on the left, so that if you've got your sword on the side, you can defend yourself against oncoming riders more easily. So if there are robbers, they're coming along the side, then you can find out you've got it in your right hand. You can reach to your left, get it out onto your right hand, and fight to your right, which is where the threat would be. Which is why, driving on the left was the sensible option. There are pros and cons to it nowadays still, but anyway. Spears, behold my prevalence, punk. Yes, indeed. They had taken Lady Anna's car since Amelia didn't have a driver's license by the Queen. Chill, it's a joke. Sure. Did have a driver's license. So the Queen taught Amelia? No, it's a UK license joke. Rock, paper, scissors? No! Stones, swords, spears is where it's at. Two types of spears. The stabby, and the throwy. Basically, yes. But then again, you've got things like halberds, which have a pointy end, but also a blade. Like it's an axe, but with a blade. And then you've got spears that have, they have a blade, but a point as well. They have other spears that have a point, but also a big ball of metal, so it's like a mace, but also a spear. And then you've got things that have hooks on them that are used for disarming or for climbing or for pulling people off horses. And you've got so many different ones. And you've got ones that are specifically long to scare horses away to protect against cavalry. And it's a whole thing. Basically, yes. 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 Alright, I don't get it though. Did she forget to renew it? Nope, it's valid. Also, there have been some more peeps coming in after the stream started. VC doors are quite open today, just so you'll know. Yeah, if anyone wants to do voice chat, then feel free to. Although you will have to tell me, because I will need to go open Discord. Should I tower shield? Yes. Shielded tower? Shielded tower shield? Well, so they go to Trafalgar Square. Trainz, alright, so you've still got the writing mindset. Gotcha. Still interesting though. They walk around the Christmas tree merchants looking for the right tree until they finally find it. Recently I started to make a new model for Trainz. It will be my first train other than scenarios, probably. First train, it would be a first train. Other were scenarios? Sceneries. Oh, others were sceneries. Oh, I see. The other assets were scenery assets. I see. I had chosen Russian subway car A, 1938 year Moscow. I thought that was interesting. Also, you can see this car here. I'll have a look. That actually looks quite a lot like one of the interurban cars that are the US ones that are available on the DLS. Yes, it looks good. I'd be glad if it wasn't Trainz. How are you today? Trainz Plus asks Kangafango. So the Bronze Age is where the spears really shone? Not, I wouldn't say that. But that's where a lot of the innovation started. Because bronze is what really started, well, we think started trade between countries, because obviously it was trade before, but to make bronze you need two things. One is copper, which is semi-rare. It's a bit rare, but not overly rare. Then you've got tin. Now tin is very rare, which is actually so rare that the Phoenicians, who lived at the eastern end of the Mediterranean, kind of the Jerusalem area around there, they actually went all the way to Britain to mine tin here, or to buy tin off of the miners here, to then ship back all the way to the Near East, and well, the entire Mediterranean really, to make bronze. Which is incidentally, some archaeologists believe that that is where Britain gets its name. So Britain, it means the land of tin. Britain. That's where that comes from. So the island of tin, Britain. Which is actually quite fascinating. You can actually still find quarries from all the way back then where they mined it. And I think that Britain is actually still quite an exporter of tin, if I remember correctly. So yeah, that's what actually started the kind of kick-started trade between countries. Because now if you were a country, yes, I know, not many of you watching are a country, but if you were a country, then you'd been using copper weapons, copper armor, copper stuff, basically, tools. And that was working fine, that's what everybody had. But then suddenly your neighbor gets a hold of a load of tin, because they have a tin mine, and now they can make bronze, and bronze is much better than copper, at least at making weapons and armor. So in those times, of course, war was a very common thing, and basically there was really no country, well, a couple, but most of the time, most countries were either at war or recuperating from wars. So if your neighbor thought they had an edge over you, then that meant war. And the thing is, they did have an edge over you if you didn't have bronze. So you needed to get bronze as well, which means that you actually, if you can't mine it where you are, if you can't mine it in your own land, then you have to trade for it. You have to trade either for bronze completely, like smelted as bronze, or the constituent parts. So copper and tin, mostly tin you would have to trade for. And that's what kickstarted a lot, well, basically trade routes. That's what led to all of that. And that meant that countries that had tin were getting really quite rich. And that meant that they then could afford more training and more troops. And that whole thing then meant they could invade more countries, which meant that they could take more resources and more slaves as well, because back then, basically every country that I can think of at the moment had a slave economy. And that means that to fuel all of that, you need to have a good military, which means that that is why a lot of the innovations in spear technology came in that time, in the Bronze Age, which all of that is quite fascinating with the trades and all that. Because the thing is that back then, like at the very start of that, I don't think, I could be mistaken, but from what I've read that I remember, I don't think money was a thing, like coins, like money wasn't really a thing. It's only after that trading revolution happened that money was invented. So that if you didn't specifically have something to trade, you could... Oh, Trainz Plus, you're going! Oh, well then, have a good night and sleep well. Thank you for stopping by. Bye. Yeah, so that was why money was invented. So if you've got a whole bunch of resources here, and then you need those other resources, but they don't necessarily need the resources you have, then you can find someone else who needs these resources, trade for money, then trade the money to those other people, and then you can get their stuff even though they don't directly need the thing that you've got, which seems very useful. But of course we know now that with banks and with loaning money and lending money and all that, it allows you to accumulate power, which means that it of course leads to quite a few bad things that we now know. But, well, not really leads, it's an enabler for those kind of things. But anyway, yeah, that's where money started, as far as I can remember. And that's why, that's part of the reason why I find the Bronze Age fascinating. And not only is the Bronze Age itself fascinating, but also the Bronze Age collapse is fascinating, because the Bronze Age collapse is where, because in the Bronze Age there were a lot of big empires. There was, of course, the Egyptian Empire, there were the Assyrians, I think the Hittites as well, the Hittite Empire, which may actually be the Assyrian Empire just from a bit earlier, I'm not sure. I think there were two different ones, the Assyrian Empire and the Hittite Empire. And they've got the Babylonian Empire, and you've got all those big empires. You've got Greece, of course. I think it's Macedonia back then, still. Macedonian, yeah. And you've got all these huge empires, but then something happens, which causes basically all of them, except for Egypt, to just collapse, to be destroyed. So many cities just in ruins, rubble, which is known as the Bronze Age collapse. Now, there is talk of the Sea Peoples, which are, as the Egyptian records go, were a people who came by ship that nobody knew where they came from, lots of different peoples, nobody knew what happened, and they just raided city after city after city along the coasts, and basically there was so many of them that they just overran everything. And they were eventually stopped in the Nile by Egypt, otherwise Egypt would have fallen as well. Of course, these are the Egyptian records, so the records may not be entirely historically accurate, because of course the history is written by the victors. So, yeah, but I think that it is generally true, because there have been signs of, well, basically, we know something happened, we know a lot of cities were destroyed, and this may have been part of the cause. Now, a popular theory is that in Europe, specifically sort of, well, northern Europe, that there was a terrible event. A lot of people think that a huge volcano in kind of Greenland erupted, which then caused a volcanic winter, which caused famine, which then caused the peoples who lived there to abandon their homes and to seek other places. And then they would have, a lot of them traveled away by ship, and then they would have banded together maybe, and perhaps that's why they fought with such ferocity, because they didn't have a home and they were looking for just anything to survive by, which would also be an indicator to that would also be true, is that a lot of people think that the kind of Near East was in a state of famine, at that point, which would again coincide with there being a huge volcanic eruption darkening the sun, which would lead to, of course, famines. So that would fit nicely together. But I'm not sure how much evidence for that there is outside of what I've just said. I haven't looked that deeply into this. Also, I've remembered that I've rotated them incorrectly. So yeah. Also, another thing very interesting that's set in the Bronze Age is, of course, the Trojan War. Yeah, Troy and Odysseus' journey, all of that, is set in the Bronze Age. So, yeah. Which was, incidentally, also where the Romans, for their own origin story, where they start. So, according to Roman legend, the founders of Rome, of the city of Rome, the city-state of Rome, of course, Romulus and Remus, but their father, their father, or I'm not sure if it's both parents, but their father at least, I think, was actually someone who fled the Trojan War. So as their own origin story, they had that, okay, these soldiers from the Trojan War fled and had many, many adventures out in the sea, kind of mirroring Odysseus' journey a bit, until they landed in Italy and founded a city, the city of Rome. Because, of course, Rome wasn't around in the Bronze Age. Rome was later. And I think that it's at least plausible. Of course, to have that sort of a heroic ancestry, that sort of connection to legend, is something that isn't necessarily true. I mean, it would be great propaganda if it's like, oh yeah, we're the ancestors of those who fought at that historic battle, that legendary battle. We're their ancestors, and our ancestors were guided by the gods to found this new city to then become the military might that basically Troy wasn't, because even though Troy was incredibly defensible, which is why the Trojan War took 10 years, Troy eventually did fall. And yes, we know that Troy is real, because for longest time we thought that Troy was just a mythical city, like maybe Atlantis or something like that. But then, of course, Troy was discovered, and not even one Troy, but actually multiple versions of Troy on top of each other, because apparently the city had been attacked and then rebuilt on top of the old things, then it burned down, then was attacked again, and each iteration built on the rubble of the old city, which is fascinating, but it also means that it's quite difficult to get to the lower areas, because that would mean that you have to dig through archaeology to get to what you're looking for, which means that, unfortunately, that would destroy the archaeology above it, which of course is done and recorded, but it means that, okay, you've got this one chance to get this bit of archaeology done, and if you sometime in the future have other machines, other ways of gaining information from in situ archaeology, then, well, this bit is gone. You don't get a second chance of learning more about it from the context in which it was found, which is, of course, a bit of an expense, really, is, I guess, the best word for it. A bit of a risk is a better word. No, I don't want these. These look like they're mirrored. I don't want them to look like mirrored. There we go. Added some more houses. I think I'll probably... not sure how I'll end that back there. I might just... Well, we'll see, we'll see. Yeah, and from here you really can't tell that there aren't any driveways in the houses that are back further. So you can see driveways in the ones in the front, but then if we look back here, there you don't notice. Industrial Revolution, 8-hour workday. Haha, yes, I remember. Reminds me of that. Haha. Ooh, that's pretty. Wishing the best of luck with this project. A rather large pine. It was about as tall as Amelia and A put together. Stabby and throwy, the 3D platformer. Yeah, it does sound like it a bit. The character designs were beyond debatable. Oh, debatable. At best. They buy the tree and get it packaged. They then carry the tree to the car. Now how do we transport it? Well, strap it to the roof of the car and drive it carefully. Yeah, because that always goes so well. Also, Snipes for me is vivid purple and Trainz Plus is orange. Snipes is a dark red and Trainz Plus is just a very intense red, the same as V'ger. For me. Sounds rather dangerous. You sure about it? Kind of. Trust me on this one. Britain! Wow! Revolution of the day, right there. Yeah, it's not been... I don't think it has... I could be wrong, but from what I know, it hasn't been confirmed. It's not that easy. It's complicated, but there are theories that that's where the name comes from. I would need to look it up to know how certain archaeologists... Etymologists, is that a word? Etymologists are scientists who have to do with the science of words, language. I think it's etymologists. Is it etymologists? I don't know. Please tell me. There are so many different studies and gists of the different studies. I think it's etymology. Etymology? Etymologists probably. Anyway. So they load the tree up on the car. Emily pulls out several straps and strap the tree to the roof. They get in the car and start driving carefully. Thank you. I want to finish it. Not leave as my other projects because I was so lazy. I can definitely empathize with that. Trainz, tell me about it. I'm a country, and my neighbors always bother me about how good their copper tools and weapons are. Ugh, so annoying. Did you mean bronze tools and weapons are? Alright, sounds good. Is there ice on the roads? And or snow? So again, I am going to sleep. There is night in Ukraine. Bye. Yes. Alright, bye. Good night. Money, 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 money. If you happen to be wise and alone and you need a it's not wise, it's rich and alone. Companion, you can go ting-a-ling. I'm the doc. Oh, you did change it. If you happen to be wise and alone and you need a companion, you can ring ting-a-ling. I'm the doc. Yeah, I get it, because the companion, Doctor Who companion, and yeah, I know. Wow, Shadice, are you a history teacher? No, I'm not. I'm just really quite fascinated by history because I didn't have the fun driven out through me in the manner in which it is usually driven out of people. The fun of learning, the fun of that. Plus, I think that knowing about history is critical, especially if it's unpleasant history, because then it helps you avoid making the same mistakes now. It helps you spot where it's like, oh, wait, the government's doing what? Oh, they're doing this? Oh, well, that's actually really similar to what happened 300 years ago. And we know how that ended. Oh yeah, and now there's the second step. It's just paralleling it. No, this is going to end up the way it ended up 300 years ago. and we need to do something about this. But, well, yeah. Which, of course, is also why I think that statues are a good reminder about that past. And yes, I get it. People don't necessarily find it comfortable to be reminded about an unpleasant past, to put it mildly. But I do still think that it's very important. Because you've also got to... Anyway, I don't want to get into it. We are the official ancestors of the actual people who have actually fought this historic battle of Kalaz, who were guided by the legendary gods of Kurmur, and since we had won that battle 3,000 odd years back, we have all the rights of conquering your measly little excuse of a land today. Like that, basically, yeah. Also, one very, very interesting thing is that Rome had a policy, at least as a republic. I'm not sure, I don't think it had that policy as an empire, but I could be wrong. But as a republic, it had a policy which stated that Rome could not enter an offensive war. Rome could be in a defensive war, or if they were provoked, or if there was some other thing like that, if maybe a country was at war with an ally, they could jump in, but they couldn't start an offensive war. Which is really very interesting, because that meant they needed causus bellis or causus bellis, which are basically excuses for wars, reasons for wars. They couldn't just say, you there, we're now at war with you and we will take all of your land. They couldn't just, they didn't do that, but of course they did do it. They just did it a roundabout way, where they kind of poked and provoked a country until they attacked first, and then it's like, you have attacked us, now we have to defend ourselves, and you forfeited your lands. They may not have had that exact accent, but it's basically the same. Right, so let's do a little bit of field work. Haven't done that in a while. Yeah, so, which is actually really very interesting. Also, Rome as a republic, well, because, okay, firstly, Rome was a city-state, of course. It was just the city of Rome, and that was the country. Then, as Rome does, it expanded, of course, because, well, it's Rome, they expand. They became the Kingdom of Rome. And some very not nice things happened there. Not really sure about exactly what happened. You can look it up, of course, but I'm not that clear on this specific subject. Anyways, things happened which led Rome to vow that they would never have a tyrant as a ruler again. They would never have a monarch. They would never have a monarch. They would be a republic. They would let the people rule the country. Which is also, I think, where that rule about not being able to initiate a war without an excuse basically came from. It would make sense. I'm not sure on this fact. It would make sense if that was where that came from. Yeah. And that held true for a long, long time. Until, of course, a certain general by the name of Julius Caesar, who... Because the thing is that Rome was built on conquering, built on expansion. That was the core of it, because a large part of the Roman economy was slave economy, so they always needed a fresh, constant supply of slaves, because that's what their economy was based on largely. So they constantly needed to conquer new countries, to expand, to grow, in order to keep that economy running, to keep their military running, to stop all the countries they've conquered from rebelling. So it was kind of a vicious cycle. The other part of that is that they needed to give... Why is that in there? That should mean that. The other part of that is that they needed to give as pay for their soldiers, their military, they gave away land. Because if you've just conquered a country, then, well, you really need the money for yourself to keep up the military. But you've just now gotten all of this land that, well, might as well use that to pay the military, the soldiers, so that they move there, and then you've not only paid them something that you didn't really own yourself, so you don't really have a loss through that, but you've also essentially settled the country. You've got a constant presence there, and those families are going to have children there who are going to grow up there as Romans. So that all worked out quite well. However, the amount of land that someone got depended on their status and success in the military. Which means that if you had a general there who was very, very successful, they could get a lot of land, which meant they could get a lot of income, which meant they could get a lot of power, which meant they could get a lot of private soldiers, which means that they essentially can become very influential, which is what happened with Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was a general, and he fought in a lot of wars, and he was given a lot of land, which gave him the power to basically invade Rome. He got such a massive following that the Roman armies faltered and joined him, which is how he conquered Rome and declared himself emperor for life. So now that was the first time since the days of the Roman kingdom that Rome had a single ruler. Yes, of course, the Senate was still there, and they of course had power, but it became an empire instead of a republic. It had an emperor, a monarch, which was of course Julius Caesar. And then now some people think that that was the start of the fall of the Roman Empire, even though Rome would continue to grow and expand and become more and more powerful up until I think the reign of Trajan, I believe. Which a lot of people think that after the reign of Trajan is where things started going downhill, but a lot of people think that it was actually when Julius Caesar became emperor, because that changed Rome in such a way that even though, yes, for the short term, and by short term I mean a couple of 100 years, Rome did continue to grow and prosper, it set Rome on a path that put a lot of power into an individual, which means that when you get emperors who, for example, send their army to invade Britain, but then at the last moment stop them and tell them to collect seashells instead to bring back to Rome, or emperors who burn down literally their capital city just because they want to put up, I think, a temple or what it was in the center, and they didn't get the land, then it means that there isn't really that much of a power that can stop them. Which, of course, isn't a guarantee that if it had continued to be a republic that those things wouldn't have happened, or similar things. But at least if it's a republic, then there's a better chance of people in power not going along with it. Now, of course, there were other things like the triumvirate, which were the three rulers, which was actually really very powerful and created a lot of stability in the Roman Empire. But then that fell apart as well, and it got to the point where Rome was so huge that logistical issues were a problem. Because Rome got so huge, it meant that such a huge economy that still relied on new land flowing in and new slaves flowing in, so that the logistical side of it just wasn't able to be maintained from a central governing point. And of course, the central governing point of Rome did change about a bit, but that was the reason why it was essentially split into two states, which was Western Rome and Eastern Rome, the Eastern Roman Empire, which they, of course, they back then just saw it as Rome. Just this guy was in charge of this part of Rome and this guy was in charge of the other part of Rome. Now, the Eastern Roman Empire did well for such a long time. And the Eastern Roman Empire is the Byzantine Empire, which, of course, did really, really well, all basically into the middle of the medieval era, I think. And they far outlived the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Because, of course, Rome, there were rebellions, people were rising up against against Rome, and then Rome was sacked twice, and they couldn't expand any further because they had to use all of their military to keep down uprisings, which meant, of course, since they weren't expanding, the economy kind of stalled, which means that they basically just got into a hole that they couldn't stop digging for themselves, which meant that another vicious cycle. And that is what most people believe is the main contributor to what led to the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire, however, the city of Byzantium which is now Istanbul. In the middle it was Constantinople. It was Byzantium, Constantinople, then Istanbul is at a very strategic position. Not only defensible, because it is extraordinarily easy to defend, very, very difficult to get into from a military point of view. It's also, from an economical point of view, at a perfect spot. It's at a strait, which means a lot of ship traffic goes through there. It is at a point where the Silk Road came to, and then, of course, they stole from the Japanese silkworms. They stole silkworms from the Japanese and cultivated their own colonies, their own silkworm colonies, which meant that Byzantium could now produce silks, which means that, of course, that meant they could sell those for extraordinarily high prices, as opposed to having to import them from China. So, yeah, I mean, the Byzantium Empire was just in such a great spot for a long, long, long time, but then, of course, the Crusades happened, and which was originally, because, of course, Byzantium was the most Christian spot on the globe for a long time. The Crusades were originally supposed to be a holy war to help Byzantium take over, the Holy Land, essentially. If I remember correctly. I may be wrong, I'm not too well versed. If I say something incorrect, please do correct me, because I want to say it correctly. But I'm fairly sure that was the reasoning behind them. But then, of course, since they had hired lots of mercenaries as well, they then sacked Byzantium, which wasn't great. And then that thing happened a couple more times. And then, of course, another power, I think the Ottomans also invaded. I think it was the Ottomans. Yeah, I think the Ottomans also invaded, and then Byzantium, the Byzantine Empire, kind of shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, but then conquered back a bit more, and then grew again and shrunk and grew and all that stuff. And yeah, eventually the Byzantine Empire did fall, but it lasted well into the medieval era, whereas the Western Roman Empire, fell long before that. And of course, the Byzantium Empire, they still saw themselves as Rome. They called themselves Romans. To them, they were Rome. But, of course, outside, there were the Byzantium Empire, they were the Eastern Roman Empire, And if you think about it, from, most people, if they think Byzantium Empire, they don't think, oh, yeah, Rome. They think, Rome, the city of Rome, Italy, all of that stuff, the Mediterranean. They don't really think about that side. Of course, also, Byzantium, there were a couple of attempts for Byzantium to retake the city of ancient power, Rome, which a lot of those attempts failed, but there was a success. They did succeed in taking. When they actually got there are historical records of them being disgusted, well, I'm not sure if disgust is the right word, but shocked by how much Rome had fallen into disrepair. The aqueducts that led the vital fluid of water, the fluid of life into Rome, only 2 of them were still standing. Buildings were crumbling, statues were damaged. The Colosseum had been used as a quarry, which is incidentally where all that damage came from that we now see. It's not that the Colosseum just crumbled. No, it was built far too good for that. No. When Rome fell, the Colosseum, being, of course, a symbol of Rome, a state symbol, was used as a quarry. They took the building materials and reused them for other buildings. The same thing that happened to the pyramids of Giza, or at Giza. They were originally covered in very, very smooth rose granite. Actually, the Great Pyramid still has a little cap on the top of granite, little smooth cap. But, of course, as through the eons, that was also quarried. Powers changed, politics changed, and there are also thoughts about earthquakes having shattered some of that, which was then quarried to be used elsewhere. There are actually some parts of that rose granite can actually be found all over the Mediterranean that was quarried there, then shipped to other locations, and then built into other structures. I think there are some churches where it's built into, but I'm not completely sure. It's been a long time since I learned this, but I'm sure if you were invested enough, you could find out more online, or wherever you are. If you've got access to a good library, probably there as well. But yeah, it's just really fascinating. I think that's you can trace the reason why the Bronze Age fascinates me as much as it does is because so much of the world today can be traced back directly to the Bronze Age, or indirectly as the case may be, but to the Bronze Age nonetheless. So, for example, if we look at, say, Germany, the Holy Roman Empire, which, of course, it wasn't Rome, it was basically Germany that just called itself the Holy Roman Empire because of the reputation, mostly. Yeah. The Holy Roman Empire. Germany was that was a huge player in medieval Europe. Just looking for a good path here. Yeah, huge player, and of course, they call themselves the Holy Roman Empire because, again, Rome had a lot of reputation. It's like, oh, yes, we're holy, and we're the Roman Empire, so yeah, you're better, right? You don't mess with us, that sort of thing. Yeah. And if you think about everything that Christianity has done, everything that happened because of it, whether you like it or hate it or don't like it at all, just not interested, or whether you like parts of it or don't like other parts of it, you can't deny that it has had a huge impact on the world. And Christianity only got its power because of the Roman Empire. Because at one point, of course, Rome was a polytheistic, had their pantheon, their polytheistic thing. I should probably read chat. Right, let's read chat. Like that. Dark red. Mwahaha. Yes, exactly. Exactly that kind of red. Shredder is revelation of the day, not revolution. Oh, you're right. Etymologist. Ah, see? I was right. It just sounded weird the way it sounded on my tongue because I'm not used to saying that word probably. Or some might say tongue, but I say tongue. I did mean copper, but yeah, bronze too. No, because we're in the UK. Hehe, Shard Eyes, you get it? Of course I do. Shard Eyes, yep, agreed. Ah, right, Snow Ice. I get that, but London's Hill gets snow quite a bit more than the coast most of the time. Yeah, there's a lot of snow in London. If you go further inland, then yeah, you do get snow in winter. But in the coast, so for example, the south coast, just as an example, so Dorset, Devon, Cornwall, sort of that area, you really don't get snow, really. Unfortunately, because I live in Devon, but yeah. But further inland you do get snow, in London for example. Not all the time, but you do tend to get snow. But I getcha. Should I place vehicle tractor in front of the stubborn farmer's house? I'm not sure which house is the stubborn farmer's house. This is just a storage thing. But I can place it. Maybe. No, this is too modern because this is in the 60s or 50s. If I had to place one, it would probably be the derelict tractor, which actually I think does fit quite well here now that I'm thinking about it. Because I did want to place one somewhere, so kind of placing it over here might be nice. Also, I need some sort of fence around here, probably. They arrive back at the manor safely and unload the tree. Nice. Alright, good to hear that their careful driving was enough to avoid accidents. They settle down in the living room while Amelia and A go fetch the tree stand. Are there going to be 3 chipmunks that jump out of the tree? Alright, Victoria Line train breaks down. Driver, Houston, we have a problem. That's funny. So did Julius Caesar actually fight in battles himself before he declared himself emperor? I'm assuming so, unless he was always in the Senate. He was a general. I'm not sure. I don't think Julius Caesar was in the Senate. I could be mistaken, but I don't think he was. I think he was just a general. And of course, back then, before kind of the modern era, generals actually did fight in their armies. They were often among the first to charge into battle, leading their troops. And Julius Caesar was no different. He was a very accomplished general who murdered a lot of people on the battlefield. He was very successful, very good general, and good meaning very successful. So yeah, he did fight in actual battles. It's only kind of a more modern thing that generals and admirals, admirals not so much, but for generals to kind of stay behind safely in camp, ordering their troops via radio to go to other places, because back then the purpose of a general was to coordinate the troops, the soldiers, and without radio, you can only do that either by flags or by smoke signals, stuff like that, maybe. Or the more common thing, shouting. Shouting and sending messengers to, if it's too far away to shout, sending a messenger, like, oh, yeah, they should do that, going up on top of a hill, looking out, oh, they're there, and then I've got to ride down there, tell them to go there. Got to pull these people down, of course, also keeping morale up. Like, yeah, our general is right there with us, riding into battle, which then, of course, well, you'd be surprised what that does for morale. Yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, he did fight. With short term, I mean a couple hundred years. Sure, that's 2021. True. Triumvirate? Stream title. It's like saying triumph. Stream title. Triumvirate. Miltoning my route. Indeed. Istanbul, Turkey. Indeed. Impressed robot face. Tender. Milton Valley Railroad. Did you paste that in there because of the different font, or how did you do it with a little code in Shadow? How did you do that? Shadows, statues were damaged? Yeah, of course. Rome was sacked twice, and their economy was shattered. No, the Colosseum was quarrified. Yeah, I mean you can understand it. It's like it's a bit like if World War II Germany had built huge structures that were symbols of their politics and their oppression, and then you conquered Berlin. What would you do? You need to build more buildings, and they've got these huge buildings that are a symbol of the guys you hate. Then, well, yeah, you'd quarry them, take parts out, and build something of your own, something new. I think it's only from a more modern perspective that is really considered poor choice, because of course nowadays we value archaeology. We value, well, a lot of people at least value old stuff basically. And from this perspective, we're like, no, why did you destroy it? Why did you quarry it? No, it's so valuable. That is irreplaceable. Why did that? That was the wrong thing to do. But back then, if you imagine that have just happened, then, I mean, you'd be glad to get rid of it, I would imagine. Don't you think so? I think so, certainly. And I don't want this road like that. I want the road to continue straight on for a little bit, like that. And I want to have another field boundary kind of along this bit. Oh yeah, I remember you mentioned that before. And the Library of Alexandria. Just imagine the amount of knowledge we'd have had it not been burnt down. True. However, I do believe definitely that we would have so much more knowledge. We would be so much more progressed then if it hadn't burned down. But there are people who make a valid point, which is that the Library of Alexandria wasn't the only library. No, there were so many more libraries, especially also in Egypt. And a lot of the knowledge, most of the knowledge was probably already copied for use in other libraries. Yes, I'm sure there is huge amounts of information that wasn't copied, that was just destroyed then and there. But there are people who say that actually they probably didn't, who are of the opinion that it didn't make that big of a difference because a lot of the information wasn't actually lost because it was already copied in other libraries. But that's really, it's really difficult to know for certain one way or the other because, well, the only documents that we have actually found from the Library of Alexandria were scrolls that were actually not in the library, but rather in a different building that was all in that kind of area. Because the Library of Alexandria wasn't just a library, it was also kind of a university of sorts. Scholars would go there to research and to study and to invent and to write and to do all these things that usually universities are associated with. So it did have kind of a campus area as well. Or something similar to that as well, is what I mean. And the only documents we found is actually from a cellar of a building that was on the campus that the library stood on. It wasn't actually part of the library. And what destroyed it? Of course, it was war, because there were ships in the harbor that needed to be set on fire because they were besieging the harbor, and then those ships drifted into the harbor and set fire to a lot of stuff, including the Library of Alexandria. But yeah, I do definitely believe that there was a lot lost in that. Well, just think, Germany, the Holy Roman Empire, well, it wasn't really Roman, and it wasn't really holy either, but still, the Holy Roman Empire. Yeah, well, whether or not it was holy depends largely on who you ask. We're holy, we're Roman, and we're an empire. Y'all are neither, so yeah, better stay away. Well, neither only applies if there are two options, or two things to choose from. You said three, so neither doesn't really apply. It would be you are none of those, but neither is only two options. Holy Roman Empire, many centuries ago. True. Anyway, the support fit perfectly, and they put the tree up. That's when the doorbell rings. Trainz, wait, you live in Devon? Yeah? That's common knowledge. Oh, that must be my friends. What? Trainz, alright, thanks for Le Tractor placement. Ordering troops around via smoke signal XD. Yeah, I'm sure it was done at least once. Look, the Caesar is sending us smoke signals. Oh, you're right. Wait, what's that? He's telling us to attack the Ballivustians? But didn't he sign a peace treaty with them last week? That doesn't matter now. It must have been an act of deception on the Caesar's part. Charge! Cut Caesar, stepping away from his ancient spyglass. What are they doing? My troops! I said don't attack the Ballivustians. And now they'll think I betrayed them. Oh, this really isn't my day. Yeah, that reminds me of like the sort of thing like a Monty Python bit. Or whatever, like sketch. That reminds me of that a bit. Trainz, it was from this. Bubble text generator. Ah, nice. Yeah, neither. Originally I didn't include Empire, but yes. Yeah. Okay, so making fields and loving it. Anyway, it was a joke, but I don't think many people probably got that joke. It was a joke based on the movie Dead and Loving It by Mel Brooks, which is a parody of Count Dracula and vampires, because it's actually they got Leslie Nielsen as Count Dracula. And he just fits so perfectly. The way he plays that humor of his, that deadpan humor, that is just perfect. The way he plays that. Anyway, that's Dead and Loving It. I got it. Dead and Loving It. Nosferatu parody. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right, so what have you been working on, Kango Fango? I've been talking about what I've been working on. Yes, it's his dry humor that gets the laughs. Yes, indeed. Very true. If it was wet humor, it wouldn't have been a laughable disaster, or rather, not. Yeah, true, actually, yeah. Me? Working on? Yeah, exactly. No, not exactly UK, but rather just exactly. As in, what? What are we talking here? Well, it's, for one thing, you're laughing quite a lot. Ah. Secondly, yeah, just what you've been working on, just curious. Here's a fun party game. It's called... Actually, it's not really a game. It's more of a question. Here's a fun party question. Which tragic tale of a city is your favorite? That's a thing. Actually, it was meant as a joke, but now that I've said it, it was actually quite. Actually, I'm quite interested to hear what you're going to answer. Alexandria. Alexandria. Why Alexandria? Stalbergs. Oh, why Stalbergs? You forgot the Z. Oh right, Z. Alexandria. You're right. I almost forgot the most important part. Why those two? I'm interested. I'm just going back here because I want to look for a specific texture that I used somewhere. Actually, it'd probably be faster if I just, if I just look in the list. Sure, it's possibly the nameless city if we're allowing fictional ones. Well, I was originally thinking real ones, but sure, fictional one as well if you want. Why the nameless city? Could you catch me up on that? San Francisco, because there is footage from before you can see. Because there's footage from before you can see. Interesting. Why those choices? What happened there to make those cities' stories tragic? Please explain. I know, I still need to put a little bit more stuff here. I mean fence with stuff. Trainz, well, it's the only one I really know a lot about, as it's Lovecraft, but the nameless city seems to be slowly taken over by the desert. Ah, I see. San Francisco was razed to the ground by a massive earthquake, and San Francisco 2 is built over it. Yes, I've heard of that. I'd forgotten. Interesting. Kingfinger, what about you? What about Alexandria? Oh, I also love Port Royal, Kingston, Jamaica. Ooh, explain. Does it have to do with pirates? See, it rings kind of a piratey bell. Could be mistaken. A pirate city that got destroyed and sank into the ocean. Ah, I see, piratey bell. There you go. Yeah. Interesting. I've been doing a tiny bit of work on 2 of my games, been recomposing the main theme to one of the games with Logic Pro 10. It didn't really turn out successfully and ended up feeling rather bulky and messy. I had composed the original one 3 years back, and it's much more snappy than the recompose. I made the original with a tile-based note system, so it was really easy to get the beat work to get the best beat. To get the beat to work probably. I'm gonna have to do it again with the piano roll so that the rhythm is kept. Nice. There's Piratey Bell, like the one in RCT3. Yes, that's it. That's why it's a bell on the pirate ship. Of course, a tidal wave rolled up the mountain and washed back, destroying it all. Was the tidal wave caused by a volcano eruption or also an earthquake? Do we know? Also, Kangafango, why Alexandria? Earthquake, I believe. Yeah. The thing I've done for my other game is I've rigged, weight painted, and recently animated the at the moment only and at the moment one and only NPC. Ah, very nice, very nice. It's always good to hear people talking about their own projects and how they're getting along and the progress they're making. That's always nice. Well, provided that they're projects that I find even remotely interesting, and not this. I mean, if it was for example a bioweapon, and it's like, yeah, well, we've just had the latest tests done on some chimpanzees. Yeah, so it's actually going quite well. Yeah, the first signs were actually only started like 3 months later, which is of course important so that when the weapon gets used, we're not that easily blamed, because in those 3 months we can patch things over with that country, so that when they all start dying, then they won't suspect us. Yeah, so it's going along really well. So, yeah, for example, that would not be a project progress update that I would enjoy, but if it's not something like that, then yeah, it's very enjoyable. Because of the battle that destroyed the library of that at the time, probably greatest wealth of knowledge ever, Alexandria? Well, I see, but I was talking specifically about a city, the story of a city, the tragic story of a city, not necessarily a part in that city. I meant more than the whole city. Once you're done with the answer, I'll tell you my picks. Alexander. Ooh, yikes! But as long as you're having fun with it, sure. No, of course not. Plus, it's against the Geneva Convention. But I'm guessing that people who would develop such things aren't really going to be stopped by that, probably, unfortunately. It would be in character for them not to be stopped by such a thing. Okay, I think I want a little bit of a water feature there. So I'm actually going to grab the... Okay, I'm going to... First of all, sing that. And then I'm going to put a little bit of water there. Down a little bit. Trainz, how about the tragic story of Burlford, the 16 Urdurs, and how the once legendary hamlet quickly fell into complete obscurity. Oh, you're right. It has fallen in complete obscurity. I've never heard of that story. Murders. Oh, I see. The 16 murders. Oh. No, I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that story. If you'd like to explain a bit more. Though I can understand if you would rather not. Yeah, my picks would be either Carthage or the city of Ur. Carthage, because originally Carthage was a city-state of the Phoenicians, and Carthage, of course, had those two massive wars with Rome, and they became nemesis almost, yeah. And even though Carthage did hold its own for a long while, that's one with Hannibal, who rode with elephants over the Alps to then beat Rome over and over and over and over again, up to a point. That he was Carthaginian. What were those? Were those the? I think those were the. Were those the Punic Wars or the Peloponnesian? No, those. I think those were the Punic Wars. I think they were called. Maybe confusing it with Peloponnesian Wars, but I think they were the Punic Wars, First and Second Punic Wars. They dragged for a long, long time. So many people killed, and then eventually Rome did break Carthage's defenses. Carthage was an ancient city. They were, like I said, originally a Phoenician colony. They not only burned the city, tore buildings down, killed, well, basically enslaved who they could, and other people just killed so many families and children, of course, who were by that time starving a lot because of the siege. Terrible, horrible. I mean, it got to the point where women cut their hair off so that they could make ropes out of that, because the siege was going on for so long that they were running out of rope. Which of course was important because of the trebuchet. Trebuchet? No, ballistas, trebuchets, that sort of thing. And not only did they do that, did the Romans do that, but they also salted the lands around Carthage, and which meant that basically they made it infertile. They destroyed the land, made it so that nobody could live there ever again without, well, and prosper. Because the thing is that, I don't know if you know this about wheat, but wheat, along with most other grains, don't like salt in the soil. They don't like it. They just won't grow. Barley does grow slightly better within salty ground, but yeah, they deliberately spread salt over the fields so that no city, Carthage, would never be able to rise again. And after Carthage had been a central point for trade and technology and an outpost for exploration into the Atlantic Ocean and all the way up to Britain and along the coast, all of that, it was destroyed like this. This ancient city was destroyed by Rome, which in comparison was, well, was very, very new. That's one of my picks. Or the city of Ur, which was a Sumerian city. Of course, the Sumerians were among the first civilizations that we have record of. Yes, the Indus Valley people were before that. However, whether you could really... There's debate as to whether you can count the Indus Valley people's settlements as cities or just as settlements. because the definition of city does vary. There are actually some opinions that the Sumerians actually sprouted off of the Indus Valley people. But anyway, yeah, the city of Ur with its ziggurat was... They invented so much. They invented the wheel, written language that we know of. There may be older civilizations as well. For example, Göbekli Tepe, which is a few thousand years older than that, does have symbols on it. So civilization may be much, much older than we previously had thought, or at least mainstream science thought. But yeah, city of Ur, thousands of years, many bloody wars, but the city of Ur with its magnificent walls was, well, it was beautiful. We know this because we found the ruins. And the city was abandoned. Because the thing is, one thing that the Sumerians were great at was irrigation. Because, of course, Ur, I think it's in Iraq? I think it's Iraq, actually, if I remember correctly. Maybe Iran. But I think it's Iraq. Lots of desert. They had to be great at irrigation because of where they lived. And actually, I know this because I watched a very, very interesting video by the Fall of Civilizations podcast on this. Actually, it wasn't just that. I also saw some things by the British Museum and other stuff. But that the Fall of Civilizations one is just best presented. I definitely would suggest having a look at it. It's on YouTube. It's free. Anyway, yeah. But the thing is that, well, it was a very, very fertile land because of the quartz that was washed down from the rivers, from the mountains. And over the thousands of years, the irrigation of the desert meant that those same things, the same minerals that were washed down there to make the land fertile, would also carry along salt with it. And salt, as we've discussed previously, isn't great to grow stuff. And since it doesn't rain, which is why they needed the irrigation there in the first place, the salt can't get washed away, so it just accumulates and accumulates and accumulates until the entire magnificent network of irrigation channels and reservoirs and dams was basically starving itself. It was poisoning itself to the point where famine essentially destroyed the city of Ur and also others like Uruk and Akkad and Eridu. And trade with outside empires, like for example Babylon, other cities, did of course occur, but that wasn't enough, especially back then where wars were so very common that if there was a weak city, a weak state, then you would take full advantage of that. And eventually, it was just abandoned because nobody could live there because things won't grow in the area. And there is actually because the thing is that cuneiform, which is the written language of the Sumerians, has been translated. We know how to read and write cuneiform, and since the Sumerians wrote on clay tablets, so just holding a clay tablet in the hand with a stylus, writing in it, which is very, very similar to what is happening nowadays with mobile phones. So yeah, thousands of years difference, and we've basically come back right to where we are, only now it's slightly more dangerous with EMF radiation and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, Because clay tablets, they didn't write on papyrus or parchment or paper or any of that. They basically wrote in stone. They wrote something and then it was baked in an oven and there you go, or just left out to dry. Which means that so much of their written records survive, even though it's among the oldest known writing systems ever to have existed. But yeah, that's why we know their language. Also, of course, the translation into Old Persian and Akkadian and all that. But anyway, I don't want to get into that. Because we know so much, and because we have so many tablets, so many records, written records, and not just official stuff. We've got recipes, we've got books, we've got just little reminder notes about. We've actually got shopping lists. We've got just such an incredible look into the life of these ancient peoples, because their records survive so well in the desert, because they wrote on clay, that actually there's actually poetry as well, which has survived, and songs. There is a poem, quite a sizable poem, lamenting the loss of Ur, and since that is translated, we actually can read in the words of the people themselves what it was like to abandon their city, one of the first ever cities, their beautiful city of magnificent walls and cigarettes, and what that was like. And I've actually read that in the hold on, I'll turn on the light. In the what's that? Yeah, a song. One song is known. Although I'm not exactly sure if it's I think it's the melody as well, but I could be mistaken. I'd have to look into it. Hold on, I'll quickly turn the lights. I'm sorry about that. Actually, wait. No, I don't need to... Okay, sure, I'll turn it on. There you go. I was about to say I don't need to turn it on because actually we're about to reach 10 o'clock, so... Oh, bye, Mr. W. I was going to say... Well, I'll be ending the stream soon anyway. Have a good, restful night. And hopefully, see you tomorrow. Right, so... Yeah. I think that it is just so incredible to be able to see, to read that through their own words. If you think about it, that is further away than Rome. It's further away than the pyramids. It's further away than just the Egyptians. Further away than the Nubian pyramids. It's much, much further away than the South American pyramids. It's further away than ancient Greece. It's further away than all of that. And the thing is, with that poem, there's in Fall of Civilizations channel on YouTube, in his video on the Sumerians, he does have an excerpt of that poem that he very, very skillfully touches on, and that's read out with pictures of the city of Ur and with voice acting as well, spoken out. But only excerpts. I read the entire thing, and you can just feel those people. even though they're so incredibly far away. I would definitely recommend that if you're at all interested in this sort of thing, to give it a read. Yeah, I just want to finish this one field, if that's okay. It probably is okay. Yes, that's what I wanted to say. But the thing is that the city was abandoned, but the people didn't go extinct. No, the people, of course, went to other countries. They went to other cities and continued their legacy there. I think it's incredible. Yeah, and the thing is that those, even though medieval times, for example, are also very interesting, like the sort of stuff that happened there, or the Renaissance, or more modern stuff, or even Roman times. What really fascinates me is stuff in the Bronze Age and stuff before the Bronze Age, because there are so many things, so many traditions and inventions and ways of doing things that have survived from back then. For example, the Space 60 counting system. That is actually the Babylonian counting system. And the thing about what's the word? Can't remember the word. What's it called? Astrology. Astrology is also a Babylonian invention, a Babylonian thing. And Greece had their own legends, their own things, but they imported astrology. And that's why there are so many strange animals in modern astrological science, so many strange things that don't really fit well with Greece. For example, a lot of sea creatures, a lot of fish and that sort of stuff. I think that's even a half goat, half fish thing, which, if you think about it with Greece, it doesn't really fit that well culturally. But if you think about Babylonian mythology and religion, that just fits so well. Because, of course, Babylonians, they had a large part of their religion was to do with water, considering that the city was, well, basically in a very dry, arid area, deserty area. For example, they had two gods of water, not just one, two. Well, a myriad of other gods, but the main two, which was Tiamat, the goddess of the sea, of salt water, and then Abzu, the god of the deep water, which actually translates, Abzu translates to deep water, Abzu, deep water. And where were the sheep? I thought I had sheep here somewhere. I want sheep. I'll just quickly populate the field with sheep. Yeah, so then a lot of Babylonian culture is based around that. And then if you imagine that was imported in that, and then of course, I think the main reason why I like ancient history and archaeology as much as I do is because it helps to tie together the real world, like the current world. Because it's like, oh yeah, this thing, did you ever wonder why there were this many astronomical signs? Well, it's because of this. Yeah, it's because of that. well, what about this thing? Oh, yeah, well, that actually goes back to those people and that culture, and they got it from there. And that's why we can trace this thing back to the Romans, and the Romans got it from the Greeks. And then, like, oh yeah, but the Greeks, they actually didn't invent it. They actually got it from the Minoan civilization, because the Minoans were actually this whole thing, and they can, and it's, yeah, it's just fascinating to me, at least. Also, the Minoan civilization, well, we call it the Minoan civilization. They, of course, did not call themselves the Minoan civilization. We call them the Minoan civilization because of King Minos, as in the king with the Minotaur, which is what Minos, Minotaur, because as the legend goes, the Minotaur thing, the thing, was actually set on that island, on Crete. So the civilization that lived there back then we're just calling them the, well, like what I said before, Minoan civilization, Minoans, which I think is a fitting name, from what we know at least about them. Yeah. I think I don't want this to be too tree heavy here. I want to get rid of the trees on this section here, at least mostly. Just open this up a little bit, so that when you look over here like this, you don't get the feeling that the town, that the buildings are kind of squeezed into the countryside as much as they would otherwise look like. So how about that? I think, well, I could use with one more tree just to break it up here, like that. Yeah, that's more the feeling that I wanted. A bit more open this way. A bit more open. Right, so now I need to get a thumbnail. Now I need to get a thumbnail. Oh, I've already got two. Never mind. That's fine then. No, I do need to get one. It's just, I meant, you know what I meant. I mean, this is what we did, but it'd just be a bit boring like this, really, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? I mean, maybe like this, but again, not really that interesting. Or maybe with the power lines. I know there's still chat to read as well. Yeah, and that's why I want to, what I was saying before, that's why I want to focus on, no, that's okay. That's why I want to focus my game on more of the Bronze Age, because most of sci-fi, well, not sci-fi, fantasy, RPGs, stories, are set in kind of a medieval fantasy setting. But I just find the Bronze Age so much more, well, for one thing, it's a much larger period of time. Second thing, like I said before, I just find it more fascinating, more captivating. Plus, I also like the color of bronze. Right. Maybe I should get a different thumbnail as well, because I would like to have a bit of water, maybe a bit of water, maybe. Although, well, maybe if I change the time of day a little bit so that the sun's coming from the other side. No, not edit session. Do not want to edit the session. Maybe like this, actually. I mean, that might be nice. Just all depends. Maybe if we can. Anyway, let's just leave it like this for now. I'm sure one of those two will be better than the other. But yeah, okay, when I say Bronze Age, I mean just generally Bronze Age. I will have elements from other eras. For example, I do want to have a pilus in the game, which is the Romans. I think pilus, Roman spear, at a very long, basically the normal wooden shaft, and then metal cap. But the metal cap had basically, it wasn't just a normal spearhead. It was a very thin, long rod that had a little head at the front, little spike at the front, which was designed to basically punch through wooden shields and maybe even armor. Also to disarm shield, because it's designed to stick in the shield so that the shield then suddenly is off weight. And then, anyway, so I do want to have that in the game. Which means that, of course, the Romans existed after the Bronze Age, so that wouldn't... it's not a period piece. It is fantasy. But I wanted, instead of the general medieval setting, I want to be sort of a more general Bronze Age setting. Again, doesn't necessarily mean the same arid landscape like in a lot of the Near and Middle East. But varying stuff. You'll see what I mean when I finish it. How about... Alright. So many bloody murders. The Burlford tragedy was said to have occurred sometime in the 17th century in Burlford. Oh, I thought in Bridgetown. A small parish in the West Midlands. Wait, Midlands? I don't think they were called the Midlands in the 17th century. Although they may have been. I don't know. That's a thing I'd double check. A few miles off of the settlement of Wilfrey, which is now known as Wolverhampton. Burlford was located on a crossroads adjacent to the River Burrell, 2 miles from the hamlet of Barnstead. Common belief is that sometime in the 17th century, most have agreed on 1635, there have been a series of 16 murders having taken place in the town, which had made council officials discard the existence Burlford altogether. Of Burlford, probably. And this is why the majority of the UK's inhabitants are actually unaware of the parish's presence. I'm gonna go now. Bye. Bye. Yes. See you tomorrow. March killings. The first murders were said to have happened in the mid-March of 1638. And by 1638 I mean 1635. At, coincidentally, 1635 approximately. William Holwick had reported that while preparing the leeks for his and his family's evening meal, he was mortified to have spotted a bloody corpse hanging over the edge of the wall. It is said that Holwick had spread the word about the suspected murder, and so this sighting had alarmed the rest of Burlford's residents as well. Later that month, a passing trader reported to have spotted a knife lodged in the stone of the now demolished Burlford Castle. Citation indeed. Citation needed, of course. With strong signs of blood on and around the knife. It is unclear whether this knife was involved with a different murder, or if it had been utilized to commit the first, or if it had just been the local butcher's. So this murder has not been confirmed to have actually happened. The remaining 14 murders that led to Burlford's descent into obscurity are said to have happened later that year, outside of March. It is said that if you wander along the moorland roads near there, you can find an old cemetery where the church once stood. And there are said to be gravestones that bear the names of the 16 murders. Ooh, creepy. Burlford, not Burlford. Burlford. Sorry, I misread that. Ooh, yeah, this TOD time of day is much better time of day. Keep in mind that it'll be chopped off at the bottom. Yes. Pilum? I don't think it was Pilum. Actually, it may have been Pilum. Or Pillus. No, it was definitely Pilum. Sorry. I must have said it wrongly then. My mistake. XD. So, yeah. I'd probs go to Burlford as for saddest town/city tragedy. Well, I would say probably Carthage or Ur would be mine. Yeah, and R. Well, not wall. Oh, right, well. Over the well. Of course. I was just imagining like a dry stone wall with like a body slumped over it because like they tried to get away from the murderer, tried to jump over the wall, but they were caught just as they were halfway over the wall, and then they were stabbed to death and were just left hanging over that dry stone wall. Sounds like poetry, that. Like the dry stone wall. Over the well. Also, Burlford, not Brelford. Haha, cemeteries. You wish. 4 Burlford, not 2. Oh, my mistake. Carthage and Ur, yeah. I see. This dry stone is correct, and slumped over is 2. Wall was 2, but the wall was circular and was used for a well. Yes. I get it. Let's see if... Okay, that's fine. Known as a well. A well. That was totally unintentional. Right, so I think we're making good progress. So, thank you all very much for watching. This stream will be archived on YouTube. And yeah, just shoutouts basically. So, Kangofango streams on Sunday. Streams driving trucks and trains. Building in OMSI and building in Trainz, TRS-19. So, yeah, have a look at that. Also, if you're playing Trainz, have a look on the download station for Central Europe and for Cornish Railways. They're both excellent maps and well worth a download if you've got the space for them. They're quite large. Yeah, that's it, basically. Nintentional. True. Well, thanks a bunch for streaming and for the shout out. Right, so that's it. Very much. See you all soon. Yes, see you all soon too. Very much too. Soon too. Bye. Bye, yes. Bye, everybody. I'm saying bye now, so if you want to say bye as well in chat, then you better do it now, because I'm going to end the stream soon, so... Yep. Bye. Why Were you startled by a spider? Miss Snipes and... Paulina 93. 93. Bye. Oh, bye. Yes, bye indeed. Gonna end the stream now. Hey Goya. What? Oh, that. Yes. Yes. There we go. One more. Bye, Mr. Snipes. It was nice having you here as well. Bye.